Hello students, in one of the previous classes we discussed the neutrality of money, which essentially meant that money was neutral in the economy. It did not have any real influence on the economic system. Classical dichotomy is also a very similar idea. The term dichotomy means segregation, departmentalization or differentiation. So this classical dichotomy says that nominal variables, only nominal variables can affect nominal variables, and changes in real variables is required to have any appreciable change in the real variables. And some of the nominal variables are money supply, then price level, and the rate of interest. Of course, the nominal rate of interest. Some of the real variables are employment, output, capital stock, or the level of technology or the state of technology. These are some of the real variables. So here by classical dichotomy we mean the idea that changes in money supply will only lead to changes in the price level or the rate of interest. It will not influence the level of employment, output, or any other real variables. This is the idea of classical dichotomy. And if you need any changes in the real variables like output or employment, then you will need changes in the capital stock or the level of technology. So this classical dichotomy implies strict compartmentalization of the economic system into nominal and real sectors. There is no flow between the real and nominal sectors. It is watertight. The compartmentalization is watertight. Changes in the nominal variables will not affect the changes in the real variables. This is one separate group and this is another separate group. So this is the idea of classical dichotomy. Now you might have got the uh, relationship between the idea of neutrality of money and classical dichotomy. This classical dichotomy is very useful concept in terms of the vertical shape of aggregate supply curve that the classical economists brought about. Okay, now we'll explain the classical dichotomy with the help of diagram and illustration. So let's find how we can explain the classical dichotomy. So here we have the diagram here. You can see it here. We have two quadrants for the diagram. On the first quadrant we have the new classical labor market, with a slight difference that here we have the nominal money supply instead of the real money supply. Okay, so this is the demand for labor curve and this is the supply of labor curve. In the second quadrant we have the production function. Q is a function of capital and labor, and on the x-axis we have labor and on the y-axis we have output. Here on the x-axis we have labor and on the y-axis we have the money wages. Okay, so let's get into the diagram. Here we have the supply curve of labor and here we have the demand curve for labor. Demand curve is a negative function of money wage rate and supply curve is a positive function of money wage rate. The intersection of demand curve and supply curve at this point determines the equilibrium level in the economy. Okay, so it determines the money wage rate as well as the level of employment. So level of employment has been found out at LE, and at LE level of employment, and at LE level of employment the amount of output is QE. And you can see that with a change in the with a shift in the demand for and supply of labor, nothing happens to the output. Here suppose that there is an increase in the money supply, which is a nominal variable. When money supply increases, we know from the quantity theory of money that prices will increase, and when price increase we know that the demand for labor curve will shift outwards. Demand for labor curve shifts outwards and intersects the supply curve at this point. Now you might think that there is an increase in the level of employment, but it actually does not take place because supply curve also does not remain same at SL. It also shifts backwards or leftwards. Why it shifts leftwards? Because there is an increase in the price level, and the increase in the price level reduces the real wage rate. So workers are not interested to work. They are not motivated to work because they are getting a lower wage rate. Okay, so if the producers want to make workers work, then they have to increase the money wage rate, and that's exactly what they do. They increase the money wage rate, and so again the equilibrium goes back to this point. And when equilibrium goes back to this point, we see that the amount of labor employed remains the same at LE, and with an LE amount of labor you can still produce only QE amount of output. So we have seen that a change in the nominal variable like money supply led only to a change in nominal variables like money wages or the level of prices. It was not able to influence either the level of employment or the quantity of output produced. So this is the idea of classical dichotomy, and now we'll see how the real variables affects the other real variables. Suppose there is a change in the capital stock. When capital stock changes, the production function shifts upwards, because earlier we had a capital stock of k bar. Now we have a capital stock k1 bar, which means then capital has increased, so a higher proportion of capital can be employed with a fixed proportion of labor, or you can employ a larger amount of labor with the increased capital stock, and the effect of all this is an increase in the level of output. So even without increasing the quantity of labor, that is the labor is same at LE, now you are able to produce Q1 level of output because the production function has shifted upwards due to increase in the capital stock. So here you have seen on the one hand increase in the money supply, which is a nominal variable, led only to changes in nominal variable like money wages and prices, but real variable like output or level of employment remain the same. At the same time, here there was a change in the capital stock, which is a real variable, and change in the capital stock led to an upward shift in the production function. So with an upward shift in the production function, more output could be produced. That is, Q1 level of output could be produced with the same level of labor LE, and without increasing the labor, output has increased by QE Q1. So why this has happened? Because there was an increase in the capital stock, which is a real variable. So we have seen that the nominal variable was not able to influence real variables. It only led to changes in the nominal variables, whereas real variables like output and employment changed. Output changed due to changes in the capital stock. So this is the idea of classical dichotomy. Thank you.